Welcome to The Red Notes. Today's video is about Bloberta and her role in both her family and in Moralton. I find Bloberta to be a very complicated, nuanced, but also very controversial character. I think that she's a neglectful parent, she's a hurt woman, and she was an abused child. But before we get into diagnosing whether or not Bloberta is to blame for all the things or some things or whatever things happened in Moralton, I want to introduce Bloberta to the audience. So who exactly is Bloberta? Bloberta is one of the main characters in Moral Orel, and most importantly, she is Orel's mom, and I think it's the second half to the instability in Orel and Shaby's life. Bloberta, as a young woman, is raised in a family where she is neglected and made to feel as though she is neither important nor a necessary part of her family. This leads to a young Bloberta seeking comfort in alcohol like her father and looking for a partner so that she can feel needed. From looking at her household, we can see that Bloberta's mother domineers and controls every aspect of her family life. And since her father is the only one who seems to care about her, and he so happens to be an alcoholic, she internalizes the belief that alcoholism is not only an escape from her hellish living, but as a necessary component of being a good person. When she meets Clay, she is excited because he is her ticket out of her family and a chance to find belonging, particularly because when she attempts to belong in her family, she is quickly silenced because her presence is not welcomed. For example, while her family practices for their family choir, Bloberta feels left out and she decides to join in. But when she does this, she's quickly told to stop by her mother because her sister, Modella, already has a soprano tune, and Bloberta's tune is not needed for her family choir.
Oh, Daddy, I feel so left out of the family choir.
Well, it's because you are. I tried talking to your mother, but she wouldn't even let me have the courage to bring it up, let alone say things.
That's okay, Daddy. At least you tried to try.
Yeah. Almost, anyway.
I love you, Daddy.
Okay.
This is also a key reason as to why she continuously seeks some form of affection or belonging, because even in her own home, she is not granted that decency. After having a conversation with Clay after meeting him, she finds out that Clay does not want to marry anyone and instead wants to live a solitary life. And rather than respecting his decisions and looking for another person who she could be with, Bloberta opts to change his mind by quote-unquote helping him, by giving him alcohol to coerce him into finding her helpful, and in order for him to loosen up, change his mind, and marry her. Firstly, I would like to note that this behavior on Bloberta's part was completely unacceptable because rather than respecting Clay's wishes not to get married or have children, she uses alcohol as a tool to get what she wants. Personally, I do not see this as any different from drugging someone because following these actions, a person can no longer consent. So in other words, Bloberta undermined Clay's agency in order to get a marriage out of him. Although Bloberta came into the relationship, marriage, and motherhood with a naivety, she eventually does realize that the life that she signed up for is not as glorious as she expected. So she numbs herself. She becomes an extremely neglectful parent who plays little to no role in the day-to-day life of her children. The affair.
I don't want to.
Well, you liked me once. What happened?
I needed to get closer.
To me?
No,
To him?
I'm sorry. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. I don't care. Wow, what a freeing thought.
I think another central component to understanding Bloberta is her affair with Coach Stopframe. While experiencing the lovelessness of life with Clay, Bloberta has an affair with Coach Stopframe. At first, she believes that there was a chance that he truly cared about her, and she falls in love with him. but eventually realized that the affection that he had given her is not because he truly loves her, but is instead because he's trying to make Clay, her husband, jealous. And the only reason why Coach Stopfring even pursued her was because he was obsessed and in love with Clay himself. However, within this process or this affair, Bloberta has Shapey by Coach Stopfring. Although Clay knows that Shapey is not his kid, he never comes out publicly about it. However, he does ignore Shapey and focuses all his attention and beatings on Oral. All throughout the relationship, Bloberta rarely intervenes in the way Clay treats the children, instead focusing on using her vices to numb the pain that she feels, because it is much easier for her to ignore than to bother trying. So it is safe to say that Bloberta is not a good mother. On Clay's alcoholism and their relationship.
Did you marry Dad?
Oh, well. Why not?
Well, it's just that when he drinks, he changes.
Oh, he doesn't change, Oral. That's just his true nature coming out.
An argument could be made that although Bloberta introduced Clay to alcoholism, she never expected Clay to turn out the way he did. Because to Bloberta, alcohol was just a way for her to help Clay express his true inner desires. And she believed and was hopeful that those desires would lead to him marrying her. Similarly, she saw how alcohol made her father the kind person that she had grown up with, and she hoped that alcohol would help her recreate the same dynamic that her mother and father had. I believe that even though Bloberta always felt alienated by her family, she also deeply loved her family and wished to replicate and participate in the same things that they did. For example, her family had a choir, and they would practice all throughout the day and perform in churches and weddings as a family. And to the outside world, aka the rest of Moralton, and maybe everyone else but her in the family, there was a bond and a connection. And she sought that out the best way that she knew how. I believe that would also explain why she was particularly attracted to Clay. I do not believe that it was just only random chance that she saw Clay and decided that he was the one. I think Clay reminded her of her father. And even though she may have resented her mother, I believe that Bloberta wanted a man like her father and wanted to be central to the function of the family like her mother was. In that case, would it be fair to blame Bloberta for choosing to have a family the way she did? Yes, I believe so. However, I am sympathetic to her partly because Bloberta had always been made to feel like she was the odd one out, not only in her family but also by her peers. While everyone was flashing their new rings and preparing for marriage, Bloberta was still single and ostracized. And in order to get what she felt she needed to belong, she coerced Clay. Although I believe that intention does not dissolve bad behavior, I am sympathetic to her intention because it comes from a place of seeking affection and belonging. And honestly, even to a lesser extent, we have all experienced that feeling. For example, if all your friends have a partner and you're the only one without one, there's often more drive for you to go out and do the same because everyone around you has done it. I shy away from making the assumption that age played a factor in Bloberta's decisions because I do not think there is a specific age and time frame mentioned for when Bloberta and Clay got married. However, if she was younger, then there is an even stronger argument that naivety played an even stronger role. But even regardless of that, Moralton is such a society that not being submissive to the culture is an extremely daunting task. One particularly supporting evidence that highlights Bloberta's need to fit in overriding everything else was her interaction with Clay when they first met. Within a couple hours of getting to know how drunk Clay was, Bloberta was repulsed by him. Even more so, she punched him. But she did not care enough not to marry him, because marrying him was much better than not marrying at all, and continuing to be the odd one out. She knew alcohol did not make Clay the good person that her father was, but she did not care enough to stop it while she was ahead. The sad truth is that even if both of them wanted to leave the relationship, their reputation with the Moralton would be tarnished. It is highly likely that Clay would lose his job as mayor, Roberta her reputation as a godly woman, Oral his reputation as a good kid from a good family, and Shapey would be shamed as the love child and a fair child between Coach Stopfrain and Bloberta. It's highly likely that Bloberta realizes that if there was a divorce or separation, her infidelity would be exposed and would be widely discussed, and more so, she would bear the brunt of most of the criticism. I think the best Christmas episode is genuinely one of the most interesting episodes in Moral Oral. However, I do not want to focus too much on that episode because most of the things that happen in the episode are more related to Oral, which I will be making a video on soon. However, the central point that I wanted to talk about is that even when they decided to divorce one another, they still ended up falling back into each other's arms because the following episode, Clay lets Oral know that the two have decided to stay together, not because they love their kids, but because they want to save face and because they have to look like a good family. And what kind of good family has a divorce? The two had been arguing about Shapey, and Clay had asserted that he does not think Shapey is his child, particularly because he never wanted a second child and because Shapey does not look like him, and also because he doesn't remember being intimate with Bloberta during the time of conception for Shapey. So this leads to an argument of divorce where the two agree to divorce one another. Clay leaves the house, and after some time, Bloberta starts to cry. She is very sad in a moment of very deep sadness and regret.
He doesn't even look anything like me. Who's been inside you?
You are disgusting. I want a divorce.
Fine, I'm gone. Live it up, baby!
The two don't really decide to work out their problems, and that is very clear when we go to the later episodes and we see that the dynamic between Clay and Bloberta has actually worsened. I remember the first season, at least the first half of the first season, I remember thinking Clay and Bloberta, even though they were a very troubled marriage or troubled couple, that they still kind of loved each other or kind of had an understanding for each other. But I think this episode, for me at least, was one of the first episodes where I saw that, oh, these two people feel trapped in this marriage. These two people don't want to be in this marriage. And these two people need to leave this marriage, not just for the kids, but for their own sanity and for their own sake. I think that my video on Clay and Bloberta's marriage does a better job of going into the nitty gritty of their dynamic and why it's extremely toxic. However, this video does not focus on Clay and Bloberta's marriage. It's more on Bloberta, so I do not want to go super deep into that. I recommend watching my video on Clay and Bloberta's marriage in order to understand a little bit more about their dynamic and their relationship and why it's just so bad. On her need for affection,
Quentin Xavier.
as I said earlier, Roberta sought out affection that she knew she couldn't get from Clay from elsewhere. She tried it with Coach Stopframe, but he was only using her. And then she fell in love with Dr. Potter's Wheel, but he did not genuinely love her either. She even attempted it with Reverend Putty, but he could not see her that way either. But she never thought to channel that love and affection to her children. As a matter of fact, she loved her cleaning supplies much more than she loved her children. It's clear that neither Clay nor Bloberta love each other and both understand that their marriage is horrible. But rather than saving themselves from an endless life of misery, they choose to continue to put on the facade of a proper Morriton family. However, this kind of family and dynamic would only continue to put the children in harm's way. The point of this video is not to compare Bloberta to Clay or even to point her out as a worse parent than Clay, because I believe both of them play a key role in the dysfunction of the Puppington family. My goal here is to talk about Bloberta and her role in the dysfunction, and my hope is that one day, possibly, if this show ever comes back, please come back, we will see her and Clay separate and end a dysfunction that they blankly call family. My belief is that the blame game does very little to solve the problem. I am a wholehearted believer that we wouldn't have gotten the Clay that we got if Bloberta did not introduce him to alcohol and force a family on him. However, I am a firm believer that nobody deserves to have a partner or a parent like a Clay. I know I talked about things that I want to see in the future. I'm talking from the perspective of things that I wish the show had portrayed if it kept on going, if the run wasn't cut short. I do know that there are like scripts out there that talk about Roberta and Clay getting divorced. I do know, but I shy away from focusing on things that weren't explicitly in the show. But yes, I do know that, Clay and Bloberta eventually do separate and that Bloberta ends up being with someone else and Clay ends up being alone or all that other stuff. I understand that, but it wasn't in the show, so I'm just not going to focus too much on it. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.